Hello and welcome back to AmateurLogic.tv. I'm Jim Burrell.
And I'm George Thomas, and we'd like to thank you for tuning in to episode 2, where we visit a radio studio.
And a couple other interesting segments, which we'll introduce in a moment. First, we thought we'd talk a little bit about the name of the show, what it means. You probably already got that figured out, but just to recap, we are all amateurs, and we delve into the logic of today's everyday technology.
Now, the fact that we're all amateur radio operators is counseled out by the fact that we were also professional radio operators at one point in the career.
Our first career.
Our first career.
My first career.
But in this program, we hope to bring you naturally hints and tips that you can use on your computer and some hacks and mods there. But we're also going to delve in a little further into the old school analog world and show you some great little tricks that you can use around your house or in your video audio productions, and just basic stuff that we like to do.
Yes, it occurred to us that the intent of the show is to have fun, and so we'd like for you to come along for the ride if you would like to. And we thought also maybe you'd like to know a little bit more about us. So as a quick intro, already said, my name's Jim Burrell. I started out in broadcast initially. Worked that little career for about 15 years and finally figured out the money was elsewhere. Went on to work in computers and have done a little stint in network security at the enterprise level. Progressed on, I guess you would say, to systems engineering. Some of my favorite OSs are Mac OS X, Linux, Windows. Not necessarily in that order. Just about enjoying anything with computing, especially networking, and how you can tie those things into everyday real-time appliances and other gear. How you can make computers talk to that stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's just a transition from the radio career, really, if you look at it, and the fact that everything's communications.
That's true. Very true.
Well, I started out as a disc jockey in the 1970s while I was going to high school and college. And like Jim, I realized that the money just wasn't in that career. So I studied electronics in college, and I got out and made a career of being a radio and television engineer, and was in the business for about 30 years. And also during that period, I got into computers. And that's basically what I do today, is one of the owners of a company that produces software products for radio stations.
Yeah, come to think of it, you didn't stay in the radio business very long as a disc jockey, not nearly as long as I did, so you were smarter than I was.
Well, what I found out is, as an engineer, I got to put in all the new toys, hook them up, make sure everything works, and then somebody else got to play with them.
Very true.
So that's one reason that I'm interested in doing this. I'd like to have some fun with the gear for a change.
Exactly. Yeah, and I am having a lot of fun doing this, what we're doing now, whatever you call it. Amateur Logic, I guess. It's just a little side note. We both started not necessarily both started. We both worked early on at the same place early on in our broadcast career. And as it just so happened, George trained me as a disc jockey. And this is back in the...
I'm sorry.
back in a decade that we won't mention. We'll really date ourselves then.
I already did. It was the 70s.
Yeah, that's right. So we're kind of like the older guys on the block. A lot of these new young upstarts are doing techtainment, or whatever you'd like to call this genre of video on the web. But maybe, being the older guys on the block, we can bring a different perspective.
Yeah, we've kind of been accustomed through our jobs over the years of being the people that everyone else in the building comes to when they've got a problem or needs to know how to do something.
We're the go-to guys.
We're the go-to guys. And we hope we can help you out with some of that stuff, too.
While we figure it out ourselves.
Yeah. We're also both semi-pro musicians. We've played for a number of years.
Yep.
I haven't played professionally for a number of years now.
Pro and semi.
But that's a lot of fun, too, and that's another hobby we had. We've burned a lot of reel-to-reel tape in the days gone past, and maybe one day we'll have a few music tips here.
Maybe so, yeah. That's quite a possibility, yeah. I like to play a little guitar and a few other instruments, none really well. And George, on the other hand, is near professional, if not professional quality drummer, and a few other instruments as well, too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's a hobby that I've kept up with all my life and still enjoy playing today.
They say computer programmers and the like.
Yeah, it kind of goes together.
It's creative, bound, creativism, something like that.
As we've already mentioned in today's episode, we're going to visit a radio station, but we're also going to introduce two new segments. One is called From the Bench, where I hack into everyday technology, and we'll either just take a look at what's in there or we'll actually find some way to improve it. And another is a website roundup, which Jim hosts.
Right, yeah. We'll take a look at some websites and see if we can't find some of the cream of the crop out there on the web for you.
So I helped Jim get into radio, and he helped me get into computers. And then sometime, during the late 80s, I posted a message on a bulletin board looking for some other programmers in town. And I had one reply, and that was from Tommy. And that's when we became acquainted and started programming together and eventually formed a company together that produced software products, and we still occasionally work together today.
Yeah, that's been a long time ago.
It sure has.
Yeah, we worked on a few projects together. Most of them were amateur radio-based things at first. Repeater database program for amateur radio repeaters, where it actually had a graphical interface and you could drive the car over the maps and it would show you the repeaters that you were in the area for. We also did some programming utilities, quick compile program for optimizing your compile options when you generate your executables. Pretty geeky stuff.
Yeah, but necessary at the time.
Yeah, definitely. We also moved on after that and formed the company like he was talking about earlier. We specialize mostly in products for broadcast industry. Those things were a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah, I still enjoy it. And you're a photographer too.
Yeah, I do some freelance photography for several newspapers in the area. Been published quite a bit. It's a lot of fun. Keeps me out of trouble. Some.
Yeah.
I'm also still a professional programmer. Most of the time I specialize in database applications using Microsoft products, although I have done some stuff with some of the open source tools now. And I do a lot of software for Pocket PC and Windows CE devices as well. There are a lot of possibilities for those devices now. We may do some segments on some of that in the future.
Yeah, I think that would be good. And Tommy's also going to be bringing another new segment to the program starting in episode 3.
Yeah, I'm going to be bringing some photo tips. We'll cover different areas. I'd like to cover some photo editing and white balance issues using some open source software that's out. And I may do some stuff with some commercial products as well, but we'll try to keep it on the low end tools that are affordable for pretty much anyone.
For amateurs.
Not just professional software. So should be a lot of fun.
I think it will be.
Recently, George made a trip to Inner City Broadcasting Studios and talked there with Roger Lamb and went on a tour. Had a nice time and saw a lot. I think you'll enjoy this segment. George, take it away.
I'm sure our viewers have seen radio stations before, but no one ever talks about the equipment that's in there and what you do with it. So we wanted to visit a little while and just get a good feel for it.
Well, I'm glad to have you visiting our stations today. Be glad to tell you what I can. As you well know, everything these days is on computer, and we use your system.
Yeah, perhaps I should go ahead and qualify it now by saying that, yeah, I'm a software vendor, and they do use my product here at this radio station.
We still have complete flexibility, but we also have the option of not having to have personnel here all the time, all thanks to computers. I will say one thing we have noted with the increasing efficiency of the operations that computers have given us, the criticality of the individual person's job has become even more so. It is increased because it is, with fewer people here, each person has a greater number of responsibilities. But on the for the most part, I would have to say it has been an incredible change. It has really increased the profitability of the business.
Yeah, I'd agree. So this mixer right here, what do you call that at a radio station? Do they call it a mixer?
Well, we call this a board.
Okay.
These, I think it may be a throwback to the old days when these are these big knobs, and these are called pots. That's short for potentiometer, which I don't even know if they have in these modern consoles anymore, but they have the same function of basically turning the volume or level up on the meters. Of course, we strive to have our meters operating up near zero, which would, I don't know why it says zero, what I would think that would be 100%, but we know what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be up to zero. You might can explain being an engineer.
Well, I probably could, but we'll just say that if you look right below the zero, there is a little 100 down there, too.
Okay.
So you can go at it either direction.
Radio people not always known for their sense of detail. You know, I never noticed that.
So if you wanted to say something on the air right now, what would you do there?
Well, say this was not an automated studio, but this was an actual live console, and for our group of radio stations here, we have the exact same layout in every control room. We, through our use of our pristine audio automation, we can actually do our show, even do recorded shows from any studio in the building for any other radio station in the building, and somehow or the other it all gets sorted out and comes out on the right transmitter. But if this was a live studio, what I would do is turn on my mic pot and turn it in, make sure the program mode is on. This is our bus, which selects which we're going to be using. If we go to our program mode, which is generally what you use on the air, you just slide your pot up, get your levels right, and talk into the microphone and let the people know that if this is an actual emergency, you'll be informed where to tune in your area for official information, stuff like that. But whatever, it's the same for if it's a CD or song ending with the music. If you have a music system that is on your computer, would use this. You'd have the screen would obviously be mounted at a location where you would have greater visibility to it. This studio operates more as a production facility, so it's really not critical that you see what's going on your automation system.
How many stations are there in this building? We
have 5 here. We have 2 AMs and 3 FMs that we operate. We have the top rated urban station actually in the state with the 99 jams, WJMI. We also have WKXI FM and AM. We're in the WKXI AM studios now, where as I said, we are broadcasting the American Blues Network. We have WOAD AM and FM. We simulcast for the most part on WOAD AM what is going on the FM, which is a black gospel format, which is very popular in the market. And on the AM, through our automation system and switching system, although we can simulcast, we can all load up previous, to the event, weeks at a time, shows, and switch from our live content that's going on our FM to different format on the AM and sell that separately. So, once again, increasing efficiency, increasing the profitability of the station. And our WKXI FM, very, very well-rated, soft soul R&B station in town.
Well, now, haven't these stations won some national awards before?
Actually, we have. Interestingly enough, when we were with Clear Channel, the AM won the award for the entire chain, which is the largest radio company in the world, for the most increased profitability.
Wow.
And yes, and it was all because we actually sold some ads on the AM that wasn't selling any ads before. I think it was $1,000, and we beat all the major markets. We didn't exactly. It was all numbers.
Yeah. Don't you have an award-winning programming team here as well?
Absolutely. The Soft Soul format was engineered and designed in part by the people who put together WKXI FM. It has been an enduring format. It zoomed up to the top of the charts. Some very good people working on the air. My job here is to make sure that they have the best tools so that we can stay ahead in the game, because there are a lot of competing systems. It's a very competitive market. There are good people that we're competing against, and we have to strive every day to make sure that we have the sharpest knife in the box, so to speak.
You said that this station is carrying the American Blues Network. Now that's coming from a satellite, and then the computer here inserts anything locally, like commercials or identification or any local announcements that need to be made. Now, recently during Hurricane Katrina, it's my understanding that the American Blues Network is located on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, or maybe I should rephrase it and say was located on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. They got wiped out. Can you tell us anything about that and how they got back on?
Yes, they actually did have some damage due to the hurricane. More than the wind damage, the problem with the Blues Network is they had water up to the over the outlets. In the building, and so that meant that the whole electrical system was kind of fried. I believe that they got away with a lot of their equipment intact, but they did have some damage, and they were able to get up back on fairly quickly. But through our switcher, what we did was we just changed the signal that we were putting on the air temporarily to simulcast our WKXI FM signal, which allowed us to get critical information, which we were updating on a live basis. So it worked out, even though they had to get back up on the air within a 48-hour period, they got back up rather quickly, and it worked out for us pretty well. We were actually had 3 of the 5 stations in the market that were on the air continuously through the storm, and we're very proud of the fact that we were able to get through.
Yeah, even though we're 150 miles from the coast here, people in this area were without electricity and water and a lot of essential services for several days, and we appreciate the service that your station and the others in the area did provide.
Well, we were glad to be able to do it as part of our commitment to public service and an obligation that we have as a broadcaster. And it's really good to be able to help people in the community. It gives us a chance to do more than just sell ads and play music, but to be an important part of people's lives. And we were without power here for almost a week, and we were able to get by on our natural gas generator, but it was still on a diminished power, and it was almost like a camp around here, but it was actually kind of fun.
Well, we may have you show us that generator in a little bit here.
Oh, sure. We'll go out back and give it a look.
Well, let's get a little geeky now and look at this equipment that's sitting over your shoulder here.
Did anybody recognize that?
Yeah, I recognize that, but you might tell our viewers what that is. There might be someone who hasn't seen one before.
Well, back in the old days, we used something called tape. Now, this is a reel-to-reel. Now, a lot of people probably are going to watch this know exactly what we're talking about. And back in the 70s, I would say this was the real big thing, and people were transferring their music to. When you say kind of preceded the 8-track tape.
They were both around at the same time, but yeah, this was the standard for quality.
And this was also quite expensive back in the day. These could cost thousands of dollars. This is just a 2-track. We had 4-track. We used to have to do production and cut commercials, and I think the term for cut a commercial must have come from the fact that we used to have to line up on these little splicing blocks and actually literally cut the tape to splice together elements, things that we can do in a digital editor almost, with a great deal of ease now. It's made everybody wants to be a record producer now.
Well, yeah, you remember when you and I were working together a number of years back at another station here in town, and we had one of our compadres there named Wayne who did a lot of commercials, and every time he would come to my office to get another razor blade, I would have to give him a Band-Aid to go with it.
Yeah, I remember Wayne.
So anyway, he's doing production now and all digital.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, so everybody's has left the razor blades and the tape behind pretty much these days.
Yeah, you know, I do remember that now that you mentioned it. We used to also have a lot more Band-Aids around the station in the first station.
Yeah, and the cassettes never were that popular at radio stations. I mean, there is a cassette player in your rack here, but, you know, I think that was probably pretty much limited to when you had something that was on cassette or you had to give someone a copy of something on a cassette.
Occasionally, and generally it involves somebody in public radio, they will do production and send out commercials, and apparently they haven't invested in digital technology, so we'll get a dub, which is we can get into the lingo another time, I guess, of a commercial, and we still have to have a cassette player, and sometimes people are surprised that you know, we still do have record players.
Yeah, yeah.
But we can't keep the stylus in them.
I noticed that.
Apparently, they're getting quite expensive.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about some of the other things here in the rack. What are these three black units on the very top of the equipment here? Those three identical units.
Oh, these with the flashing lights?
Yeah.
These are our Symmetrix voice processors. These are the 528Es. We use these to process our microphones and give us a little more of the oomph. So if you're recording yourself at home and you don't quite have that DJ sound, it might be that we have a few little cheats in our bag of tricks.
So that's why that little wiry guy can sound like King Kong.
He talks like this when he's talking on the phone, but he gets on the air like this. Well, some of it's probably the microphone processor. Do you have one for this microphone, by the way?
Actually, there is a little processing going on, but it's in the camera.
I didn't want to sound like I really sound.
Yeah. Well, actually, we do have a little AGC. I hope it's not too much. We should have checked it.
There you go.
Now, I see you've got a Gettner phone system there. That's
This is our, since this is a least used studio for live work, this is our oldest phone system. This is a Gettner, but it's a reliable phone system. Gettner does a good job. This allows us to interface our calls if we wanted to do a live recorded interview with somebody, or we want to do a live interview with somebody via the telephone. Or sometimes you'll hear a spot on the phone where the car dealer sounds like he's kind of coming in over a telephone. That might be where we get that element of the commercial downloaded from the phone, and then we'll edit it in our Cool Edit software, which is what we use here.
And right below that, I recognize that piece of gear.
Yes, this is our Broadcast Tools switcher. It allows us to switch from the network feed to our CDS32 digital automation system, which plays our local commercials, which are played from a log which is generated from our traffic department up the hall, transferred down here, and each day it loads up its script, and it'll switch from the satellite feed to our local feed and then back again, play our local IDs so that we can stay legal. Yeah. And in general, it also plays those little things called magic calls, which are on a satellite system, the local part of what the announcer might say before they come from the network, where to make it sound like that each announcer is in each individual town doing the show. It would do for instance here it would be Blues 1400, WKXI AM, and it would play that little cart. They would punch a button and they would know that it would roll 5 seconds, and then they would come in, and so it seems seamless on the air, and it's all made possible by our switcher.
So the switcher is actually the final authority in what goes on the air, is that correct?
That is correct, and you can manually override anything that's going on to take live control back.
So you still have a CD player here, so do you play many CDs anymore at a radio station?
You know, we have CD players in both of our radio stations, primarily for when we have to do maintenance, or if we have a computer problem, or we have to do an update that requires a restart that doesn't happen in the middle of the night. A lot of times if you're listening to a station in the middle of the night, it might go off and come back on again and nobody would be there, and what you're hearing might be a reboot required after a Windows scheduled update. So just like your computer at home, our broadcast terminals do the same thing if you have it set to do that.
You mentioned station identification. What is station identification? What's required?
Well, the FCC requires that hourly we broadcast our call letters, which are WKXI FM, for example, and the city of license, so that anybody who might be listening, in case we're causing interference perhaps in another area, or for whatever other reasons the FCC has, they require that we do that at least once an hour. And that is our station ID. Now, we also will do in between those things called station calls, which may just be the call letters, or we may do station promos, which sound almost like a legal ID, but really just give more of our slogan, or something like that.
If he names half a dozen cities for this radio station, which city is it really licensed to?
If I'm not mistaken, that should be the first thing he says. And then everything after that, I guess, is kind of a bonus.
It's kind of optional.
Yeah, those are the cities they're adopting.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't you love us back?
Yeah.
We say your name every hour.
We hope you're enjoying today's episode of AmateurLogic.tv, and we'll be back with more of Roger at the radio studios in just a few moments. But first, we wanted to introduce you to this new segment this time. It's Website Roundup with Jim Burrell.
Hello, I'm Jim Burrell, your host for Amateur Logic's Website Roundup. We've got some great websites to look at, so let's get those browsers fired up and your bookmark key ready. First, we're going to a place where geek is good and tech is king. George, tell us more, please.
Well, my website pick is geekvideo.org. It's one of the first sites that listed us, so we were happy about that. But there's some good content on there as well, and it deserves a look if you haven't been there already. When you first go to the site, you're greeted with new releases, and the current new release this week that's showing is Hit Episode 9. It's the most recent release. Right below that is Hack Point 5, which is a pretty good show. If any of you have seen it. If you haven't, you might want to check that one out. And right below there is Amateur Logic Episode 1. And they gave us a pretty good review there. We appreciate that. And also on here, besides just tech videos, there's a listing of some tech podcasts that you might like Twit, The Geekcast, Dignation, Engadget. All of these are great podcasts. But anyway, that's geekvideo.org. Check it out today. We think you'll like what you see there. Now back to you, Jim.
Thanks, George. Great website. I enjoyed that. Now we're going to a place where knowledge rules. I think you'll understand more when we hear about Tommy's website.
Thanks, Jim. Today my website's going to be Wikipedia.com. Wikipedia is an online encyclopedia. They claim to have up to 787,000 topics of information indexed on the site. Sometimes I use Wikipedia for my homepage. On the main page of the site, they have current news, feature articles, trivia bits, and this day in history type information. I find that kind of interesting. But Wikipedia is an awesome search engine. You can type in topic of information, anything from household items to things that you or your children may need for school projects. Pretty much anything you used to find in a whole set of encyclopedias you can find right online. Wikipedia is becoming pretty integrated into other applications as well. The first one that comes to mind is the Trillian Instant Messenger client. As you're typing in your message in Trillian, things that are indexed on Wikipedia also often become a hyperlink, and you can hover your mouse over the link and a box will pop up and you can see some tidbits of information about the item. If you actually click the link, it'll take you to the Wikipedia site and you can see all about it. Wikipedia is pretty easy to use. You basically just type in your phrase into the search box, and I'm just going to type BitTorrent in here. So say I'm new to the web and I want to know what a BitTorrent client is. Hit enter. In a matter of seconds, it pops up and you can read all about it. Wikipedia is a lot of fun. If you have some free time, just type in things and anything that comes to mind, and you'll be surprised what comes up. Anyway, please check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a pretty informative site.
All right, Tommy. I like that website, Wikipedia. That was a great tour. I guess now it's time for my selection. And for my pick, I choose osnews.com. It's a site that offers details and insights into computer operating systems. So you can choose the operating system of your choice and go to osnews.com and learn a lot more about it than you probably would elsewhere. It really doesn't matter whether you're a Windows buff or a Macintosh fan or a Linux aficionado. They have it all at osnews.com. Let's take a look. When we get to the front page, we see the news archive. This will be a list of all the latest news for your OS, or perhaps other OSs. A review of FreeBSD 6.0. Wow, I didn't even know that was out. Interviews are available. Industry greats interviewed. They have interviews with Chris Moore of PCBSD, Linspire CEO Michael Robertson, of GNOME fame Miguel de Icaza. There's also some editorials. The editorials give a good perspective on the industry. And there's an OS resources area. It has a lot of very helpful books, different operating systems. So you can find some good stuff in there no matter what your particular operating system preference. Well, that's going to do it for Amateur Logic's website roundup. Please join us again. I'm your host, Jim Burrell, and we enjoyed it. See you next time.
What do you use for editing radio commercials here today?
Well, today we use software-based editing systems here. Some people still use hardware, but what we like to use is a program called CoolEdit Pro. And a lot of people probably are aware of this program if they're into any kind of editing of audio. You can download the CoolEdit program and give it a shot.
This program right here that says Adobe Audition, that's the
Well, it's Adobe Audition. Now, I guess you got me. Adobe bought the product, which was owned by Centrillium, and now it's called Adobe
Audition. Yeah.
Audition. That's
Same
right.
product, though,
yeah,
right?
But you can probably download the CoolEdit for free. But no, we bought Adobe Audition, and it allows us. I think you call this a linear editor, non-destructive type.
Yeah.
Where we take a file and until you're doing all your editing in a non-destructive way. Say, you can take breaths out. A lot of times, that'll actually you can take 3 seconds off the end of a spot just by taking all the out of them, and there's a lot more than people see.
So this is a program similar to Odyssey or any of the number of programs that some of our viewers might be using at home.
Yeah,
except this is a more professional.
Well, for what we use it for, this is probably the best application. It allows us to switch from this, which is a single waveform edit, so we can get our individual elements together, and we can go to the multi-track unit and put these elements together. If I were over here, I'm use a quick shortcut here. I'm just going to put several pieces of the same thing. But say I've put together different sound effects, and I go over here, and now I see that I have these three elements here. I can now arrange them, just dragging them anywhere I want to on the screen, and produce different effects. If I wanted a slight stuttering effect, I could take the first S and a T off of something and put it really close together, and you'd get that little roll, and then you could go into the main thing. You begin to see how radio stations put these elements together. Also, if you had more than one voice, maybe they could be recorded at separate times. You can overlap them in a way that it sounds like they are all happening in a cohesive type moment. And that's what we use it for. It's also, I understand, a pretty good for a music production. But some people, a lot of the people who probably be viewing this use more of the music editing software, which allows for a lot kind of finer tuning and different tweaks than we would need for what we do.
Richard Nixon could have done well with one of these.
Oh, he could have really done some dirty tricks. It's kind of like it is like the Adobe Photoshop of audio. You can take things and compose completely different pictures than what actually happened. So it's a natural fit for Adobe to have purchased it, I suppose.
We'll have some fun with that one day.
Oh, yeah.
On the air, you're using an automation system. I happen to know the developer personally. He's a great guy.
Oh, yeah. And my neighbor.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about it.
Well, this is CDS32, formerly known as Cartworks, a pristine system. It allows you to take many different elements and compose them into a what we hope is a cohesive and enjoyable broadcast day. Here, this is the digital system for the WKXI AM, and it is primarily tasked to do two things. Run the automation for the on-air aspect of WKXI AM, which it does on a back channel so that the studio is free for production. And what you will see, it allows us to see what's going on locally, though, here on the screen. It's visually represented by what is...
I see something just lit up there, green.
Okay. Actually, yes, we just caught, well, down here, that's one of those magic calls I told you about, which is the localized liner where the DJ would come in and say, you're listening to WKXI AM, Blues 1400. And then there would be maybe a pause, or maybe if they're really tight and on the ball with their timing, they'll come in right after it on the network, and it will sound like one whole unit. And then they will go back into a song, or it may have been an optional break where we don't have commercials for that break, so we play go back to the network for a fill tune that they may have there. What we have here is scheduled coming up in about 5 minutes, so that's what that was. That was an optional break, and it's going to come up on a break at 15:20, which will be 3:20, and we've got our commercial set loaded here. This has to be timed out. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4-minute break, so they would have 4-minute song on there if we didn't have to take this commercial break to fill.
To cover the whole.
But they're gonna throw out to one of these liners. They're gonna throw to this commercial break. It's going to play for 4 minutes, and in exactly 4 minutes, it's going to play another liner back into and over the network that it's going to switch to simultaneously. Okay. So it'll just roll right back into it, and if it timed out great, you won't even know that it wasn't.
So it'll sound like there was somebody here that turned on the mic and said this.
Right, and it allows us to have 100 stations, or 1,000, depending on how large the network is, all have different things happen at the same time locally, but then you seamlessly rejoin the national network and go back to programming.
Of scale.
Yes, economies of scale, writ large.
Okay, so the big deck here in the middle of the screen is showing our commercial break that's going to play next.
This little graphical interface, I happen to know why you designed it to look like an old, what we call a cart machine, those old things that look like 8-tracks that we used to use for commercials, yeah. And that allowed old disc jockeys to kind of make the transition into computers, and so still today, we have the option, we use this interface, and these represent individual commercials here. As a PetSmart,
so in the old days,
Marines, all ready to go.
That would have been like one machine. There would be all these tapes stuck in those individual slots there.
Right, you'd have to have your card, and they'd have to be queued up.
Oh yeah.
And if they were on if it was a 100-second card, and somebody put a 30-second commercial on it and didn't queue it up or put 2 on there, you may have, and they were in a hurry because you only had so many, you might have more commercials than you have cart decks. They might have taken it out early, and you had the risk of having dead air, which used to be just a big deal.
Something's on the air again. It's playing another liner.
Yeah, now it's about to throw to the commercial break, I would imagine. And when it does that, it'll play for 4 minutes and come back to the network.
Now, I've been up here before and visiting, and I've seen people come in dressed in real unique outfits and such, and y'all have a lot of rap stars come through.
Oh yeah, we have certified pimps, players, ballers, thugs, just all around. We're a very diverse group, and they're all nice folks, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's what I noticed.
It's all show business,
yeah,
really. We've had them all come through.
Yeah, so
and it would be nothing to have somebody come in with a gold teeth all the way front and an earring with a diamond this big in it, and then that morning have just had the mayor in.
Yeah.
They just go to different stations is all.
Yeah. I see you're playing a commercial right now.
Yes, I was beginning to get worried that I might have to get you to consult with me on repairing this automation. No, but it actually did throw to the commercial break. You see it turn red, that means it's active. Mm-hmm. We have our our clock up here, and this is timing the breakdown. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but it's telling me that we have, for instance, now 2 minutes and 55 seconds left in the commercial break before it throws back to the satellite.
And now we're on the PetSmart Halloween commercial.
That's right.
These are not PetSmart.
That's PetSmart. That's the name of it. You never been to PetSmart? It's like Walmart for pets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
I just didn't know it was two separate words like that. With the,
I don't know. Now that you mention it, that would be whoever put that data in there. The garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
But hopefully, it looks like they put the spot in correctly because the next one is not playing.
Okay. What is this thing right to the right of the computer here?
This is a working record player. Might otherwise be seen by a lot of people who view this in a museum, but we have to keep the style, the business end of it here. We keep that under lock and key so that we can actually keep it, because they're getting hard to find parts for these things.
So rather than just a music player, this thing today has more or less turned into a music instrument, hasn't it?
It really, to think about it, compared to the way that we do things today, it always was an instrument. It was always playing those discs and making the vibrations, and it was just the only electrical part was the amplifier. So yeah, you're right. It was like an electric guitar almost. And there are still people who think and believe, and maybe to them, records sound better. And there are still things you can't get on CD. So we have to have it. I've tried to take the turntable out before, and it's amazing. It's like I get a union strike protest that everybody makes a point to corral me that day that I mention it. Hey, we need that turntable in there. Everybody's got their record collection. They think they might need a cut out of it one day.
Yeah, I've got a lot of vinyl and some really good turntables. CDs sound better. CDs sound better. Well, if you knew all the stuff they had to do to get those grooves to fit on the side of a record, they have to compress them.
I'm with you.
And do all kinds of things to them. So, some people say tube type stuff sounds better too. Yeah, maybe a little something to that. But for the records, I'm not with them.
Moving into the 21st century.
Yeah. Well, let's look around the station here and see a little more of, what's around.
Sure, let's go to the equipment room, and then I'll give you a tour of the studios.
Okay.
As you might be able to tell, this network grew rapidly and over time, and we are actually in the process of making a gigabyte switch, but being in a corporate environment, I have to order it in the budget.
There's a network server there?
Yes, we have. This is our backup server. This is our primary server, which is a Dell PowerEdge 2850, which does what we need for our accounting and business end pretty well. Mm-hmm. We don't use server-based audio, which means that all of our studios are independently contained, so that if one goes down, it doesn't affect the whole system. But we do backups here, and part of our phased-in backup system that we use a Dell PowerVault 110T, which we recently installed on our new server, and through that we can actually take a snapshot of every radio station and put it on a tape, and for less than $50 we've got a backup of all that music, and we don't have to worry about putting it back in, because even if you're ripping music or however you get it into the system and not doing it real time, it's still time consuming and tedious to have to enter it. You have to mark your cues, and you have to enter all the header data, and it's just a mess. So we are taking precautions, and this can happen overnight in the background without really taxing the system too much.
Yeah. There's nothing at this location but studios. The transmitters are all in different buildings around town, aren't they?
Yes, we have one of those microwave transmitter dishes out here, and what we do is we take our signal from our studios and run it through these, as you said, the Studio Transmitter Link STLs.
Right below that I see these Optimod studio chassis. That's your secret weapon, isn't it?
The Optimod, I've always thought that must stand for optimum modulation.
It does.
It does? Okay. when we're feeding the transmitter, and to have our loudness on the dial, which used to be a big issue for program directors, that one of the DJ's jobs on an AM transmitter was to sit there, or as a board operator, and make sure that the level, even if the song was kind of mellow, you're to drive those meters, very important. And this kind of takes care of it for you.
Is that your streamer down there?
That's the streamer down there, that innocent-looking 1.8 gigahertz standard desktop computer, generic, IBM clone, whatever you want to call it.
What's the web address where they can listen to these stations?
WJMI.com.
Okay.
We simulcast 99 jams. It's an amazing amount of people who listen to us. We have soldiers in Iraq. We have people in Miami. We have people who call us from these remote locations. That's how I find out when it's down. Never is anybody in town listening.
Yeah. Now, in the next rack here, the first thing we see is the modulation monitor.
And what we use that to is we use that to monitor our modulation.
I've never guessed that.
I know. I didn't think it's very complicated how the technical mind works, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, just looking
you explain
here,
what this does, George.
Okay.
Okay.
If you look at these meters, they dance a little more than the meters do on your cassette deck or something, because those aren't VU meters. Those are actually peak reading meters, and you'll notice they're much more sensitive to the changes in the audio.
Right.
Now, the modulation monitor is used to assure that your station is loud enough but not exceeding the federal limits.
Compliant.
Yeah, and we could look right here real quick and tell if you were legal or not, but we won't tune down too far into that. Just basically, you look legal just at a glance.
Well, good. And we can skip right on to this feature. You see, this is a frequency agile.
You can check your competitors as well and see if they're playing fairly.
That's right. And then but you know what the rule is as an engineer? You don't call the FCC on somebody in town, because you don't want that guy kicking the rocks over too much.
Yeah. Okay, this is, I'm assuming, the American Blues Network satellite receiver?
Yeah, just like your DirecTV receiver, we get a digital satellite transmission from the Blues Network. And this, of course, you want 3 green lights across the board, and that just tells us that everything is good. We've got signal, we're locked. And it is amazing what little variation you can have on tuning these things in. It's amazing what we have to go through to get those locked onto these birds. Yeah.
Perfect, yeah.
Some of them are kind of oriented in weird spots on the horizon.
Now, below that, you've got a group of radios here. Why would you want radios in a radio station?
Well, these are actually what we monitor our program on-air feed with, because as I remember back when I was a young disc jockey, you were even then an old engineer. And
thanks a lot.
Oh, you were older than me, so you were old. When you're 19, hey, 30's old. But this allows us to make sure that we don't listen in program, because program is just what's coming out of your board. You don't know if it's getting through these studio transmitter links to your remote transmitter, and if it's getting from your transmitter onto the air through the antenna. So it's very important that you maintain your monitoring the station through an actual on-air receiver. So what the signal does, it goes from our studios through our patch panels or punch blocks into our routing distribution amplifier, through the Optimod, out the STL, to the transmitter, up the transmission line, then the antenna, back again to a receiving antenna here, and into our Rolls Quartz digital synthesized tuner, which is a very precise monitor and tells us whether or not we're actually on the air. Basically, it's our radio.
So if we went in the control room right now and turned up the speakers, we would be listening to one of these radios.
As a matter of fact, if I really wanted to have some people freaking out right now,
change the station
I would actually just turn that off, and they would think they were off the air in the control room.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes, depending on who's on the air, they may or may not notice.
Yeah. Who is Marty?
these obviously we use for remote broadcast, our Martys. Those little antennas, the little short antennas, kind of weird looking things that you see on a radio event, they're transmitting back to a receiver just like this.
They sound much better than a telephone or a two-way radio or anything. They sound almost as good as actually being in studio,
Right.
if you've got a good signal.
If you've got a good signal, we have situations. Sometimes a ball game will come to town and national coverage. We'll be out doing a broadcast, and all of a sudden, their guy on the sideline starts firing up his microphone. He's on the same frequency we are.
Yeah.
We run into problems, but we can generally call around and work those out.
We're over in the 99 Jams WJMI control room now, and we just wanted to look at what this station was doing on the air.
All right. Well, we just left a commercial break. We have our music log playing right here, and that's this area right here. We take our commercial log from the what we call our traffic department, which generates the log and keeps up with the billing, and the music director generates a music log. It puts them together, and here we have a composed log, and what's coming up. Right now we're playing Happy Hour coming up. It's Kanye West and Gold Digger, and you got the whole thing here. You can even pan down and check out where the commercials are coming up relative to the time. Make sure you're staying on track with your log. Coming up here, this area I just highlighted, you can tell that the commercials are actually even blue. They're a different color. The jingles and elements are purple. Then you have things that are red, generally need your attention. It's just general stuff, kind of very intuitive.
Okay. Well, I don't really want to make this a commercial for my product today, although we will do that on another episode. So that's
really
basically enough to show
but
how.
It's a very important part of what we do here.
Oh, it is.
It's the heart of the broadcast part of the radio station. I just want to talk about one little thing here, some of the little fun things and what we call drops, the jingles, the music beds and all that. We have part of our automation system, which is this keyboard right here, which they can punch up. They can put sound effects, all kind of fun stuff. And a lot of times when you're hearing that, it's from one of these, what we call an instant access panel, or some people call it a hot box, things like that. But that's how they could punch it up. There's actually a representation of it back behind here that they can actually see what is on each one of these keys.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool. He did pretty good.
And we're outside back of the studios now. This is your emergency power generator?
Yes, this little baby right here came in real handy during the storm. As a matter of fact, we found out that we probably want to have a bigger one because we're only able to power part of the building, which are primary systems, but we had to have support people here. And without any power at all and none of the air and temperatures in the 90s.
No windows.
Yeah, it got kind of hot. But we had fans going. But we're going to extend that. But this right here got us through. It's a Kohler power system, fast response. It's 20. It'll hold up 5 radio stations and our small microwave transmitters that get us to our main transmitter. We have a much larger one of these that will hold up the transmitter, which needs a lot of power. How many watts would you say?
You probably have probably 50 to 100 kW out at your transmitter site.
Yeah, we're actually a 100,000 watt station, but we're, you're only putting so much in because of the gain you get with the antenna and things like that. But these are a must-have in an emergency situation.
We hope you've enjoyed this visit to the inner city radio facilities here in Jackson. And Roger, we want to thank you once again for showing us around.
Well, it's good to have you here, George, and we hope you'll come back sometime. Maybe I can show you around the transmitters and we can talk about digital editing.
We're certainly looking forward to it.
All right.
Boy, I tell you, George, really brings back old memories.
It doesn't it? Things have really changed since you and I were on
Oh,
the air.
man, they really have. So much, everything is computerized now.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, which reminds me, I'm looking forward to this next segment that you're going to do, entitled From the Bench. In fact, I'm curious, what are we going to work with on the bench?
Well, today we're going to talk about mini DV cables and how you could possibly come back from the store thinking you've got the right cable, but it won't work with your camera. We'll show you a solution for that.
So you finally decided to connect your mini DV camera to your computer
So you rush to the store to pick up an IEEE 1394 FireWire card and a cable that'll fit your camera. Before you grab that cable, though, there's a few things you should know. Just because the cable looks correct and the connector does fit your camera, that's no guarantee that it's going to work. While the connectors are identical to what you need, a standard IEEE 1394 6-pin to 4-pin cable is wired differently than a DV cable. This also holds true for those nice all-in-one adapter sets that are so popular today. Now, I already had this adapter set with what looked like the perfect combination of connectors to fit my camera, but when I plugged it in, it didn't work. Reaching for the trusty ohm meter and a known good DV cable, I compared the two cables and found that they were not wired the same at all. So naturally, I decided to correct the situation. For those interested, here's a picture of the DV cable wiring. You'll also find this picture posted on the AmateurLogic.tv website. This is the 6-pin male to 4-pin male FireWire adapter that came with my adapter set, and it's actually two connectors in one. There's a little plastic sleeve here that fits over the outside of these two connectors, and inside of that sleeve there's just a series of wires that connect the two connectors together. Using a small screwdriver, I was able to pry and look inside and see that there was something in the adapter that looked like hot glue. There are wires in there as well, and I was afraid that when I pull this apart that I might damage the connectors. So instead of doing that, I decided to take a razor blade and slice down the side of the adapter where I wouldn't cut any wires or anything, and then I peeled it back, made my modifications. I did have to cut a little of the hot glue away with the razor blade, and once I was finished, I sealed it back up with hot glue, folded it back over, and slipped a piece of heat shrink tubing on it. Now, some camcorders today use USB 2 as an interface to your computer. I don't have any experience with those, so you're on your own as far as those go. But when it's time to get a mini DV cable that's FireWire for your PC and your camera, you want to be sure that you check to say that it is DV camcorder compatible. This is probably not what you need.
George, that was an interesting segment. I think that's something I can take home and use myself. I think other people can too.
Well, I hope so. That's something I needed to do for myself one evening, and I thought, well, we might as well roll a little tape because some of our viewers may be facing a similar problem.
Exactly. That's what AmateurLogic.tv is all about.
We hope you've enjoyed episode 2 of AmateurLogic.tv and look forward to seeing you again in episode 3, where we've got something really special for you in the can.
Yeah, really special. You'll have to tune in to see what that is.
Good night.
And that was pretty good. I think we can live with that.
Is that all of it?
That was a take. Yeah, that's it.